The first sign that the universe had finally noticed Earth was not a message, a warning, or a beam of light. It was silence, an unnatural, suffocating silence that settled over the planet like a held breath. For decades, humanity had searched the stars with radio telescopes, deep space arrays, and theoretical models built on hope as much as math. Americans grew up on stories of first contact, alien invasions, heroic last stands, and cosmic brotherhood. Hollywood had prepared the public for spectacle, but reality arrived with something far colder and far more terrifying. It arrived all at once. At 4:17 Eastern Standard Time, every deep space monitoring system operated by the United States Space Force registered anomalies beyond the orbit of Pluto. Within seconds, civilian observatories from Arizona to Chile confirmed it. Objects were appearing where nothing had been moments before, not drifting in from hyperspace with dramatic flares, not screaming through the void with detectable propulsion signatures, but simply existing. They were already there. Within minutes, analysts realized the truth was worse than an invasion. This was an encirclement. Hundreds of fleets materialized at key gravitational anchor points throughout the solar system. They positioned themselves with mathematical precision, occupying orbital lanes, Lagrange points, and high-energy transit corridors. The formations were elegant, predatory, and unmistakably military. Ships of impossible scale hung in the darkness like steel continents, blotting out stars that had burned for billions of years. Earth was surrounded. News networks scrambled to keep up as images flooded in. Satellite feeds showed the night sky subtly wrong, constellations interrupted by vast shadows. Amateur astronomers live-streamed trembling footage of shapes sliding across the heavens. Social media exploded with panic, disbelief, and denial. But denial collapsed quickly under the sheer weight of evidence. This was not a single species. That realization struck next, and it struck hard. Spectral analysis revealed wildly different energy signatures. Hull designs followed no unified aesthetic. Some ships were jagged, asymmetrical nightmares bristling with weapon apertures. Others were smooth, organic-looking structures that bent light around themselves. Some fleets glowed with internal energy fields like caged suns, while others absorbed radiation so completely they appeared as voids cut out of space. Humanity was not being contacted. Humanity was being assessed. Across the United States, emergency alerts interrupted early morning routines. Military installations went to full readiness. NORAD tracking systems shifted from missile defense to extraterrestrial threat analysis. The president was moved to a secure location as continuity of government protocols activated for the first time outside of drills. Every branch of the U.S. military found itself staring at the same impossible conclusion. There was no hostile action. Not yet. That restraint was more frightening than immediate attack. It suggested confidence. It suggested planning. It suggested that whatever had arrived did not see Earth as a threat requiring urgency. Globally, governments attempted coordination, but the truth was that the center of gravity had already shifted. The United States, with its space surveillance network, nuclear triad, and hardened command infrastructure, became the planet's de facto nerve center. American analysts led the effort to interpret alien intent, not because of arrogance, but because the situation demanded speed and capability over diplomacy. Hours passed, then days. The fleets held position. They did not broadcast. They did not maneuver aggressively. They did not respond to any signals sent toward them, whether mathematical greetings, universal constants, or encoded peace offerings. They simply waited, their presence an unblinking eye pressed against humanity's soul. As the initial panic gave way to grim realization, a darker theory emerged within classified briefings. This was not an invasion force in the traditional sense. This was a quarantine. The fleets formed a shell around Earth, extending outward through the inner solar system. Any probe or vessel attempting to cross the boundary vanished, not destroyed in visible explosions, not deflected, but erased from sensors as if reality itself had swallowed them. The message was clear without words. Nothing leaves. Nothing enters. Humanity was contained. Markets crashed, religions fractured and reformed overnight. Millions prayed, millions more raged. In the United States, streets filled with flags, protests, and impromptu memorials for a future that suddenly felt stolen. Yet beneath the fear, something else began to stir. Defiance. American history had been shaped by moments when overwhelming odds demanded more than surrender. From revolutions to world wars to the cold stare-down of nuclear annihilation, the Ional psyche carried an ingrained refusal to accept extinction quietly. That instinct now spread beyond borders, infecting humanity as a whole. If the universe had come to judge Earth, then Earth would not go quietly. The first human attempt to challenge the perimeter came from a U.S. Space Force experimental drone launched from lunar orbit. It was unmanned, stripped of any weaponry, and programmed for pure data transmission. It accelerated toward a gap between two alien fleets, its sensors recording everything. It never reached the boundary. At precisely 73% of the projected distance, the drone ceased to exist. No debris, no energy spike, no radiation burst, just absence. The data stream cut off mid-packet. That loss confirmed the worst fears. The encirclement was not passive. It was enforced by technologies so advanced they defied human physics. Somewhere within those fleets existed systems capable of nullifying matter itself. The situation escalated from unknown threat to existential crisis. Yet even as despair loomed, something curious began to appear in the data. American analysts noticed subtle discrepancies in how different fleets maintained their positions. Some adjusted in micro-increments, compensating for gravitational fluctuations. Others remained rigidly static. Some reacted to solar flares. Others ignored them entirely. These were not a unified armada. They were rivals. The realization rippled through intelligence agencies like an electric shock. Multiple alien powers had arrived simultaneously, all surrounding Earth, all observing the same planet, yet not coordinating with one another beyond maintaining distance. Earth was not merely quarantined. Earth was contested. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not facing a single enemy, but a gathering of watchers, predators, scientists, conquerors, and perhaps executioners, all drawn to the same location for reasons still unknown. Why now? Why Earth? Why humanity? The answers did not come from the stars. They came from history. Deep within classified archives, American defense analysts began cross-referencing alien arrival vectors with human activity over the past century. Nuclear tests, space exploration milestones, high-energy particle experiments, the first fusion breakthroughs, the rapid expansion of artificial intelligence. A pattern emerged. Humanity had crossed a threshold. Somewhere in the silent calculus of the galaxy, Earth had gone from curiosity to variable, from background noise to emerging factor. The fleets had not arrived to conquer immediately because conquest was no longer guaranteed. That realization changed everything. The fear that had gripped the planet began to transform. It did not vanish, but it sharpened, focusing into something dangerous. Resolve, determination, the willingness to adapt. In underground facilities across the United States, scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked without sleep. They dissected every scrap of sensor data, every gravitational anomaly, every quantum fluctuation at the edge of the alien perimeter. The goal was no longer communication. It was understanding. If humanity was surrounded, then survival depended on learning the rules of the cage. The fleets continued to wait. They did not know that Earth was watching them just as closely. They did not know that humanity, cornered and afraid, was at its most inventive. They did not know that history had shown, time and again, that surrounding humans had never ended the way invaders expected. Above the blue planet, the alien armadas held their silent vigil, confident in their superiority. Below them, a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and the constant threat of self-destruction, began preparing for something far greater. Not surrender, not extinction, but response. The universe had finally come to Earth, and humanity was about to answer. By the 10th day of encirclement, humanity had stopped asking whether the fleets would attack and started asking a far more dangerous question: why they had not. Across the United States, the initial shock had hardened into a tense, grinding rhythm. Cities did not fall silent, they grew louder. Factories ran around the clock. Data centers glowed like artificial suns. Military bases became hives of activity as plans were drafted, discarded, and rewritten faster than anyone could track. The presence in the sky had not paralyzed the nation. It had accelerated it. The first breakthrough came not from weapons labs, but from astrophysics. American researchers analyzing the perimeter noticed something deeply unsettling and profoundly hopeful. The boundary that erased probes was not uniform. It behaved differently depending on mass, velocity, and energy state. Low-energy particles passed through unimpeded. High-energy radiation sometimes scattered. Matter above a certain threshold simply ceased to exist. The perimeter was not a wall. It was a filter. That distinction changed everything. The fleets were not sealing Earth off with brute force. They were enforcing a set of rules. Rules meant limits. Limits meant vulnerabilities. The United States Space Force quietly launched a new series of tests, each more daring than the last. Subatomic particle streams were fired toward the perimeter from multiple vectors. Quantum-entangled signal pairs were separated, one kept on Earth, the other sent toward the boundary. Exotic matter simulations were run at scale, pushing the edge of known physics. The results were inconsistent, unpredictable, and thrilling. Some signals echoed back distorted but intact, some vanished, some returned altered, carrying noise patterns that did not originate from Earth. The perimeter was interacting with reality itself, bending probability, collapsing wave functions, and rewriting outcomes. It was advanced, but it was not omnipotent. As days turned into weeks, another truth emerged. The alien fleets were not static observers, they were watching one another. American analysts detected subtle shifts in fleet orientations, weapon apertures aligning briefly, then retracting, energy fields flaring for microseconds, drones, alien drones, probing rival positions before retreating. Whatever coalition had formed around Earth was brittle, held together by mutual interest rather than trust. Earth was the prize, and every fleet wanted to know what the others would do first. That hesitation bought humanity time. In the public eye, the US government maintained a careful balance between transparency and control. Citizens were told the truth, Earth was surrounded, and the threat was real. But they were also shown progress, data visualizations, declassified research milestones, carefully curated evidence that humanity was not helpless. The effect was electric. Fear did not vanish, but it transformed into something uniquely human, collective stubbornness. Volunteer engineers flooded defense programs, retired scientists returned to labs, university campuses became auxiliary research hubs. Hackers, coders, and theorists pushed simulations beyond official parameters, chasing solutions no one else dared to consider. This was not a single nation fighting for survival anymore. This was humanity, galvanized by the pressure, led by a culture that had been forged in crisis. The second breakthrough came from an unexpected corner: artificial intelligence. For years, American AI systems had been constrained by ethics boards, safety limits, and regulatory oversight. Now, under existential threat, those constraints shifted, not vanished, but redefined. AI was no longer a tool for optimization or prediction. It became a collaborator in survival. Massive neural architectures were tasked with one goal: model alien intent. Not language, not culture, intent. They ingested everything: fleet positioning data, energy signatures, reaction patterns, historical analogues from human conflict, even speculative xenopsychology models. The result was not certainty, but probability landscapes. And within those landscapes, a terrifying conclusion solidified. The fleets did not agree on humanity's fate. Some viewed Earth as a resource-rich world to be harvested once resistance was assessed. Others classified humanity as a potential long-term threat to be neutralized early. A smaller subset appeared to be studying humanity as an anomaly, an aggressive, rapidly advancing species that had achieved technological acceleration without collapsing. And at least one faction appeared concerned. Concerned not for Earth, but for the others. That faction's ships maintained greater distance from the planet. Their weapons remained dormant. Their energy signatures fluctuated in patterns that suggested restraint rather than readiness. They were not allies, but they were not eager executioners either. That knowledge became leverage. Humanity's next move was not an attack. It was a demonstration. On day 37, the United States initiated Project Firebreak. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, a fusion array, long rumored, never confirmed, was brought online. Unlike previous reactors, this system was not designed for energy production. It was designed for signal generation. A controlled, sustained release of energy tuned to resonate with the same quantum thresholds observed at the alien perimeter. When it activated, Earth briefly became the brightest object in the solar system. The energy pulse rippled outward, invisible to human eyes but unmistakable to advanced sensors. It struck the perimeter not as a projectile, but as a message written in physics itself. The boundary did not erase it. It bent. For the first time since the encirclement began, something human touched the cage and came back intact. The fleets reacted. Across the system, alien formations shifted, energy fields flared, drones launched and recalled in rapid succession. The silent stand off broke into controlled chaos as each faction reassessed its assumptions. Humanity was not passive. Humanity was learning. Within hours, analysts confirmed the impossible. The perimeter had been forced to adapt. Its filtering thresholds had adjusted, however slightly, in response to the energy pulse. That meant it was reactive. And anything reactive could be pushed. The public announcement that followed was brief, measured, and historic. Humanity had made contact not with aliens, but with the rules governing them. The message was clear without bravado. Earth was not contained by force alone. Earth was contained by caution. That realization rippled through the fleets like a shockwave. Some repositioned farther out, increasing distance. Others tightened formation, projecting strength. One faction deployed a massive construct near the sun, siphoning stellar energy at a scale that dwarfed human capability. It was a warning. But warnings cut both ways. In response, Project Firebreak expanded. Additional arrays came online across the United States and allied territories. Each pulse was different, probing new frequencies, new interaction modes. The perimeter warped, flexed, and strained under the pressure of human curiosity, weaponized by desperation. And still, no shots were fired. That restraint began to feel less like mercy and more like fear. Inside classified briefings, a new theory emerged, one so audacious it bordered on insanity. The fleets were not waiting for reinforcements. They were waiting for proof. Proof of whether humanity was worth erasing now or containing longer. Proof of whether Earth would become a threat that required cooperation among rivals who despised one another. In other words, the aliens were running the same calculation humanity had run for centuries when encountering new powers. Can they fight back? The answer, slowly but unmistakably, was becoming yes. The third breakthrough came at a cost. An experimental orbital platform attempted a partial phase shift maneuver using data derived from the perimeter's behavior. The goal was not escape, but overlap, briefly existing in the same probabilistic space as the boundary. For 0.3 seconds, the platform succeeded. For 0.3 seconds, human technology touched alien technology without being erased. Then the platform vanished. But the data it transmitted, in that fraction of a second, changed everything. The perimeter was not a singular construct. It was a network, a distributed system maintained collaboratively, begrudgingly, by multiple fleets. Each faction contributed resources to maintain the quarantine, not out of unity, but out of mutual distrust. None wanted another faction to gain unilateral access to Earth. The cage existed because no one trusted anyone else. That was the flaw. Humanity had spent its entire history navigating systems built on distrust, balances of power, mutually assured destruction, cold wars balanced on the edge of annihilation. The concept was not alien. It was familiar. If the perimeter depended on shared control, then it could be destabilized by asymmetry. By forcing the fleets to choose between cooperation and advantage. As Section 2 closed, a plan began to take shape, one that did not rely on superior firepower or faster ships, but on something far more dangerous. Understanding. The alien armadas still surrounded Earth. They still believed humanity was contained. They did not yet realize that the cage they built was becoming a trap of their own making. And humanity, watching patiently from below, was preparing to spring it. By the time humanity understood the cage, the universe had already made its mistake. The alien fleet still surrounded Earth in vast, layered formations, their silhouettes unmoving against the stars. To them, time was abundant. Civilizations that measured history in tens of thousands of years did not fear a few restless weeks from a newly noticed species. They believed patience was power. They did not understand human momentum. Across the United States, the strategic posture shifted from reaction to orchestration. This was not publicly announced. There were no speeches declaring victory or defiance. Instead, the tone changed quietly. Military briefings grew calmer. Scientific reports became sharper, more confident. The frantic edge dulled, replaced by something colder and far more dangerous: clarity. Humanity now knew three things with certainty. First, the perimeter was a shared construct, maintained through reluctant cooperation between rival alien powers. Second, that cooperation existed only because Earth remained an unknown variable. Third, destabilizing that cooperation would force the fleets to act against one another or withdraw. The challenge was not power. It was leverage. The United States led the effort not because it claimed ownership of Earth's fate, but because it possessed the institutional memory to recognize the situation for what it was. This was not an invasion. This was a balance of power crisis on a galactic scale, and Earth had been dropped into the middle of it. Human history was filled with such moments. From nuclear brinkmanship to global deterrence doctrines, humanity had learned how fragile alliances became under asymmetric pressure. The same instincts that had once kept the Cold War cold now guided the response to something far greater. The plan that emerged was breathtaking in its audacity. Humanity would not break the perimeter. Humanity would exploit it. Project Firebreak evolved into something else entirely, its original purpose eclipsed by a new objective. Instead of probing the boundary uniformly, pulses were now targeted asymmetrically. Specific frequencies were directed at specific fleet sectors. Timing patterns varied. Energy profiles mimicked alien signatures captured earlier. The goal was not communication. The goal was confusion. Within days, the effects became visible. One alien faction adjusted its formation in response to a pulse that appeared, by all external measures, to originate from a rival fleet. Another responded with a countermeasure. A third powered up weapon systems briefly before standing down. To human analysts, the data painted a clear picture. The fleets were beginning to misinterpret one another's actions. The shared network that maintained the perimeter began to strain under contradictory inputs. Small errors appeared at first, microsecond delays in response time, slight mismatches in energy synchronization, nothing catastrophic, nothing obvious. But complex systems did not fail all at once. They unraveled. The alien factions did not speak with one voice. They did not share trust. They shared only fear, fear that one of them would make the first move and lose control of Earth to the others. Humanity fed that fear. A second layer of the plan unfolded in orbit. Using insights gained from the lost experimental platform, engineers deployed swarms of microsatellites equipped with quantum noise generators. Individually, they were insignificant. Collectively, they introduced statistical anomalies into the perimeter's monitoring systems. Ghost signals, false positives, shadows where nothing existed. To the alien fleets, it looked like probing behavior. Aggressive probing behavior. The result was immediate and volatile. Several fleets repositioned defensively, their formations tightening. Others expanded outward, attempting to gain better sensor coverage. In doing so, they disrupted the delicate geometric balance that allowed the perimeter to function seamlessly. For the first time since the encirclement began, gaps appeared. Not openings large enough for escape, but imperfections large enough to matter. Earth scientists watched in stunned silence as the data confirmed what once seemed impossible. The perimeter's efficiency dropped measurably. Its erasure threshold fluctuated. Its response time slowed. The cage was weakening. That was when the universe blinked. On the 73rd day, a fleet on the outer edge of the encirclement powered weapons for longer than a passive posture required. The energy signatures were unmistakable. This was not a warning flare. This was readiness. Within seconds, another faction responded in kind. The standoff escalated not toward Earth, but sideways. Humanity had done the unthinkable. It had shifted the axis of threat. Earth was no longer the primary concern. The fleets were now watching one another. In response, the United States authorized the most dangerous phase of the strategy, not because it guaranteed success, but because hesitation now carried greater risk than action. The next pulse from Project Firebreak was unlike anything before it. It was not powerful. It was precise. The signal carried a structured complexity that mirrored the perimeter's own coordination patterns. It did not attempt to override or disrupt directly. Instead, it inserted a problem. A paradox. To the alien network, the signal appeared valid. It complied with the system's rules, but its resolution required consensus between factions that fundamentally disagreed on Earth's status. The perimeter hesitated. For 1.7 seconds, the network failed to reconcile the input. For 1.7 seconds, Earth was no longer fully contained. Nothing escaped. Nothing entered. But something changed. Across the solar system, alien fleets reacted violently, not toward Earth, but toward the network itself. Emergency protocols activated. Redundancies clashed. Control nodes competed for authority. The quarantine construct flickered. Humanity did not cheer. Humanity prepared. This was the most dangerous moment yet. If the alien factions unified in response, Earth would be erased. If they fractured, the consequences would reshape the galaxy. The fleets chose fracture. One faction withdrew its contribution to the perimeter, pulling energy and resources back to consolidate. Defenses. Another attempted to seize control of the network unilaterally. A third retaliated, viewing the move as an existential threat. The encirclement collapsed, not explosively, but catastrophically. Sections of the perimeter failed. Others overcompensated, annihilating anything caught in their field, including alien drones and auxiliary vessels. The sky above Earth filled with flashes of impossible light as technologies far beyond human understanding collided. For the first time, alien ships were destroyed. Not by human weapons, by alien mistrust. Humanity watched as gods bled. And in that moment, something profound shifted in the human psyche. The fleets were no longer unknowable forces. They were entities bound by the same limitations as any intelligence that feared loss. They could make mistakes. They could panic. They could lose. As the alien factions turned on one another, Earth remained untouched, not out of mercy but irrelevance. The prize had become too dangerous, too costly, too destabilizing. Humanity had become the catalyst of a conflict no one else wanted. The United States seized the moment. A final maneuver was prepared, not to attack, but to declare presence. Using the weakened perimeter, a human signal was projected outward, riding the chaos. It carried no language, no demands, no threats. It carried evidence. Mathematical proofs of human technological acceleration. Simulations of future growth curves, records of human warfare and cooperation, a brutally honest archive of what humanity had survived and what it had become capable of when cornered. The message was simple in structure, if not in implication. Earth was no longer safe to contain. The signal spread through the alien fleets, intercepted, analyzed, and reanalyzed as battles raged around it. Some factions dismissed it. Others reevaluated centuries-old doctrines. One conclusion became unavoidable. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a destabilizer. And destabilizers did not need to win to be dangerous. As Section 3 drew to a close, the alien armadas began to pull back, not in retreat, but in reassessment. The encirclement was broken. The cage was gone. Earth was still surrounded by threats, but no longer trapped within a single, unified structure. The sky was changing again. This time, not because humanity was powerless, but because it had proven something far more terrifying. That even surrounded, even outmatched, even judged by the universe itself. Humanity could force gods to hesitate. And hesitation was the first step toward survival. The universe did not forget what happened around Earth. Long after the alien fleets withdrew from their catastrophic standoff, the consequences continued to ripple outward, carried on radiation echoes, corrupted data packets, and the silent testimonies of destroyed vessels drifting through interstellar space. The encirclement of Earth did not end in conquest or annihilation. It ended in something far more unsettling for the powers that had come to judge humanity. It ended in uncertainty. For the first time in recorded galactic history, multiple advanced civilizations had converged on a developing world and failed to control it, not because they lacked the power, but because they lacked unity. Earth had not shattered their fleets with superior weapons. It had exposed the fragility of their assumptions. Humanity was supposed to be contained. Instead, it had become a fault line. In the days following the collapse of the perimeter, Earth did not celebrate. There were no global parades, no declarations of victory carved into monuments. The sky was still crowded with unknowns. Alien forces still lingered at cautious distances, observing, recalculating, and waiting. But the fear had changed. It no longer tasted like helplessness. Across the United States, and soon across the world, a new era of resolve took hold. Emergency powers transitioned into permanent infrastructure. Research facilities expanded into hardened arcologies. Orbital shipyards, once theoretical, were greenlit and constructed with staggering speed. The lesson of the encirclement had been learned too deeply to ignore. Humanity would never again allow itself to be surrounded unprepared. The most profound change was not technological. It was psychological. Before the fleets arrived, humanity had seen itself as a fragile newcomer in a vast and indifferent cosmos. Afterward, that narrative collapsed. The universe was not indifferent, it was cautious. It had reasons to be cautious. The alien powers had learned that humanity did not behave like other emerging civilizations. It did not wait centuries between breakthroughs. It did not stabilize before expanding. It advanced in violent, uneven bursts driven by crisis, competition, and an almost pathological refusal to accept limits. And now the galaxy knew. Humanity began broadcasting again, Not pleas, not greetings, but markers. Autonomous probes were launched beyond Earth's orbit, each carrying records of the encirclement and its outcome. They did not threaten, they did not boast. They documented. Any civilization that intercepted them would see the same message encoded in math, physics, and history. Earth had been tested. Earth had adapted. Earth had survived. The probes did not need to say more. The alien fleets continued to withdraw over the following months, one by one, slipping back into deep space. Some vanished entirely, their losses too severe to justify further interest. Others remained on the fringes, watching from afar, studying humanity with renewed caution. A few, however, did something unexpected. They left beacons, not messages, markers of attention. The implication was chilling and exhilarating in equal measure. Humanity was no longer being watched as a curiosity. It was being tracked as a variable that might one day matter far beyond its home system. Within classified assessments, American analysts reached a consensus that would shape the next century of human policy. The encirclement had not been an invasion attempt, it had been a risk assessment. Humanity had failed that assessment. Failed because it could not be controlled. Failed because it had proven capable of turning observation into leverage. Failed because it had forced civilizations far older than itself into open conflict. That failure was humanity's greatest success. In the years that followed, Earth changed rapidly. Space was no longer treated as a distant frontier, but as a contested domain. Defense platforms were constructed not in secrecy, but openly, their existence a statement rather than a provocation. Humanity did not hide its preparations. It normalized them. Children grew up knowing the sky was not empty. Education systems taught astrophysics and strategy alongside history and literature. The story of the encirclement became foundational, a reminder of vulnerability and capability intertwined. And beneath it all, a quiet understanding took root. The universe had drawn a line around Earth. Humanity had stepped over it. Far beyond the solar system, alien civilizations debated what to do next. Some argued for preemptive eradication before humanity grew stronger. Others warned that such an attempt would unite rivals once more, this time against the instigator. A few proposed cautious engagement, studying humanity not as prey, but as a potential equal. None could agree. That indecision was humanity's shield. The galaxy had encountered many powerful empires, many ancient species, many advanced technologies, but it had rarely encountered something like this, a species young enough to still be afraid, yet bold enough to weaponize that fear into innovation. A species that did not dominate because it was strongest, but because it refused to break. The fleets that once surrounded Earth were never seen again in the same formation. The memory of their failure lingered like a scar across interstellar strategy. Earth became a reference point, a warning encoded into navigational databases and strategic models. Avoid convergence. Avoid containment. Avoid provoking the humans. Because if humanity could do that while caged. What would it do when it reached the stars? The universe had come to Earth expecting submission, harvest, or extermination. What it found instead was resilience sharpened into strategy, courage amplified by desperation, ingenuity forged under the weight of extinction. Humanity did not conquer the invaders. It outlasted their certainty. And in doing so, it sent a message that would echo far beyond the edge of known space. Surround Earth at your peril, because the species that learned to survive while surrounded would never stay caged again.